Well, hello there. Buddha Zhen Shen-Lang here, and this is the Shaolin Chi Mantis Traditional Buddhist Kung Fu Podcast. And something you're not going to find very, well, it's not going to be very common. You're not going to be able to find this topic. I'm going to actually present Shaolin Kung Fu as a traditional Buddhist, Zen Buddhist tradition. Okay, so here we go. The best way to do this is I have two books. They're basically the same. But in this particular book, the Shaolin Kung Fu Initiate, I put a little extra stuff in about actually telling you what it's going to be required to be an initiate. You can go through our entire Shaolin Chi Mantis Buddhist beginner program, which is 4 semesters, about 2 years, and not be required to actually become a Buddhist, not be a Zen Buddhist, not be Shaolin. You know, you're basically just giving it a trial period to see if you can get through our beginner program. And then if you can get through the beginner program, you become an intermediate student. In the beginner program, you're a white sash plus a white sash, then you graduate, and then you become a white plus 1 green, then a white plus 2 green, a white plus 3 green, and then if you can graduate that level, you go to the blue sash, and that's where I start teaching you swords and spears and all kinds of advanced weapons, whip chain and all kinds of stuff. But, well, that's actually more in the advanced program. But in the intermediate program, which is also 4 semesters, you'll get a weapon every single semester for 4 semesters. And you'll get the 10 Shaolin forms. You'll actually get, 1 through 10. But I don't teach the common order to teach them traditionally, at least for the last 100 years, is to actually teach them in the easier versions, Shaolin 6, 7, and 8. And then everybody kind of disagrees where you go from there. It doesn't really matter. So in my Shaolin Chi Mantis school, although maybe by the time we get there in the intermediate, maybe I'll change my mind. But no, right now the curriculum's already designed and everything. So it's 6, 7, 8. And I'll have to look at my curriculum poster. You can go online to shaolinchimantis.com. And if you can find it amidst those 100 pages that are there, there is a curriculum poster. And I'm going to abide by that. I designed that back in the early 90s. I learned Shaolin Kung Fu during the 80s. And so I'm going to stick to that curriculum, okay? It's a tough curriculum. Nobody's graduated my intermediate program ever since 1984. And what are we talking, 35 years, and nobody's got out of the intermediate. So I'm just going to keep it the way it is. It's hard enough. I'm not going to make it any harder. That's pretty much the easiest way. It's designed to be the easiest way there is. Each weapon kind of leads you to the next weapon. They're in an order that really makes sense. Okay, so anyway, I decided that for this podcast, I'm going to kind of change direction, and this is our first one doing a video podcast. And so the audio podcast will have maybe some background music and foreground music and maybe some music at the end and stuff. I don't know what I'm going to do on the video podcast because I actually do not know how to edit video. I've got Adobe Premiere in the last year, but I've tried opening it and using it a couple of times, and I haven't figured it out yet, to be honest with you. So I'm just going to I'll play around with it, and eventually I'll be making really cool movies. So all the videos that you see and the music videos I produced as Richard Del Conner and Shaolin Records, those were actually done in my phone using Filmic Pro, which I'm recording on now, and then editing in LumaFusion. So, well, I guess I could in a way, but my goal is to I'm moving to the computer here. So the audio podcast, I'm recording simultaneously over here in Logic Pro. So that's my goal, is to now record in Logic Pro and make really higher quality podcasts, audio podcasts, than I was doing with my phone. So anyway, I'm trying to move up the ladder here. So eventually I'll have some really cool videos, and maybe the video podcast will be really exciting, and I'll have dynamics, and background music and stuff. But right now I'll probably just take this iPhone video and slap it on the internet for right now, because I don't have a lot of time I've got a whole bunch of projects and albums I'm recording and books I'm writing, and I was supposed to publish a book last month, but let's just get to the meat here. My goal is to kind of be more succinct in these podcasts. And so anyway, this is the Shaolin Chi Mantis Traditional Buddhist Kung Fu Podcast, and I'm going to read to you this book, which I think really is going to give you the best understanding of what Shaolin Kung Fu is, especially from our perspective in Shaolin Chi Mantis. And I come from Wong Jack Man, Grandmaster Wong Jack Man is the Jing Mo School in San Francisco. And Wong Jack Man is famous for his fight in 1964 with Bruce Lee, which people will argue about the outcome. And you'll hear really goofy stories about it because people weren't there. And even Bruce didn't tell the truth about it. So no, only the people that were there really know the truth. And even them, they all had different views. Bruce had he actually went to Bruce's school because Bruce wouldn't come to the Wong Jack Man school. He actually said, well, you want to come spar with me, come to my school. And so my master, Wong Jack Man, went and visited him at his school. And he was looking for something peaceful. He wasn't trying to beat him up or throw him out of his school or, ruin his reputation. He was just wanting to see what his skills were. In fact, he told all his friends and he said, I'm not going to, he knew that Bruce came from Wing Chun. He says, okay, so I'm not going to use my kicking because otherwise it won't be fair because there's no kicking in Wing Chun and, Bruce won't be able to deal with it. So he actually didn't use his kicking and fought him for like 20 minutes, just sparring hand to hand. So Bruce, he said Bruce was formidable, and especially in terms of the hand fighting. But Bruce wasn't, unfortunately, he actually beat him, and then Bruce didn't accept it, and then he kept fighting and fighting and fighting, and then they finally just broke it up. So it was one of those fights that just didn't go for. Bruce was just going to keep going until he was either knocked unconscious or Wong Jack Man surrendered. But neither of Wong Jack Man, even though he was, I guess, more to. Well, anyway, going to the fight. There's a good book. I just finished reading it. My school brother up there at the San Francisco Jing Mo School, Rick Wing, and you can buy it at Amazon. I got it, and like I said, just actually finished it yesterday. It's called Showdown in Oakland. So Showdown in Oakland by Rick Wing, my school brother, and he tells the story. Basically, he lets other people tell the story, and even then, everybody that was there didn't get to see every move and everything that happened. But anyway, it was just kind of interesting to get that picture and realize that I think the overall thing that impressed me the most was that Bruce really didn't want the world to know Kung Fu. He just was looking for fighting, and he came from China, so he knew some Kung Fu. He knew some Wing Chun, and he knew the Tan Tuis. And that was it. And his idea was all about winning, and that was it. And so after he fought my master, he realized, well, he turned his back on Wing Chun after that. And he decided he had to just add a whole bunch more stuff and look for more street fighting to be able to win faster and easier. And that's, he wasn't really trying to teach any traditional Kung Fu. In fact, like I said, he turned his back on Wing Chun. So he basically said that, forget the Chinese masters, because he didn't really have a Chinese master. And he tried to just create a martial art. In fact, people look at him as the foundation of MMA, the modern mixed up martial arts. You just mix up whatever you can and that's what you get. And so nobody's going to have the same thing. There's nothing traditional about it. And everybody's going to teach something different depending on what they like the best. So unfortunately, he ended up being the death of Kung Fu instead of the birth of Kung Fu to America. So that's kind of a shame. But anyway, my master kept teaching all the way till he passed away in 2019, as I understand. And Bruce Lee passed away in the 70s. So I think that Kung Fu is really about living a long and healthy life, and that's really what it should be about. And there's lots of different styles of traditional Kung Fu, and I'm just really happy to have Shaolin Kung Fu and be a disciple of the Northern Shaolin as opposed to the Southern. I started with the Southern, and I was glad to get move to the Northern. And then I know there's lots of other styles, Choi Lei Foot and Hung Gar and lots of things, and they're all good. I mean, if you're good at anything, any style, you can win a fight. I know some masters of all kinds of different styles, and the karate stylists, even though they may only know 1/10 of as many moves as we do, but they know them really good, and it only takes a couple of punches to win a fight. I mean, I've watched a lot of matches on TV, and all you got to do is even just brush the temple here, and with a padded glove, and you can knock somebody unconscious. So winning a fight is not that big a deal. So that's not really what Kung Fu is about, and especially Shaolin Kung Fu, which is about Zen Buddhism. So you can't really do Shaolin Kung Fu and not be a Zen Buddhist, or you're just kind of doing the dance without the art. So I'm kind of putting them back together, and which is something that Americans haven't wanted and don't really have a proclivity or desire for, because Americans are giving up on all religions, even Christianity's taking a big dive. So Americans are basically turning atheist, which is a shame. But that's the nice thing about Zen Buddhism and Shaolin Kung Fu, is it's actually all the Buddhism Well, Buddhism doesn't have any gods, and Buddha is not a god, so a lot of Buddhists don't even know what Buddhism is. But Buddhism does not have any gods in it. And Zen Buddhism is like a hippie version of Buddhism, because it's saying no idols, no temples, and the dark, you learn from life lessons. So it's really a stripped down version of even Buddhism, trying to say, well, learn the Buddhism and then go out and experience life and then spend your life getting enlightened. And that to me is more the essence of Zen Buddhism. But in order to be a Zen Buddhist, you got to learn all the Buddhism first, and then you learn how to apply it and live it and experience life and then grow. It's kind of like learning the ABCs and learning how to talk and write. You learn how to talk and write, and then you go off and write and talk in your own way. So that's what I want to teach. And I'm going to share my book, Shaolin Kung Fu Initiate, here to really kind of impress on the fact that traditional Kung Fu is a beautiful, wonderful thing, and it makes your life better and happier. And well, I'm 67 years old, and man, the only regret I have is that I haven't had more Kung Fu in my life, I mean, I got tons of it. I was teaching like 12 classes a week, and I raised my kids, in Kung Fu. And so I'm hoping to promote it as a traditional Kung Fu. You got to find a master like me, and then you just spend the rest of your life learning it. I mean, I've honestly, even though I've learned, the 18 classical weapons, and a couple of more, you can only really do one weapon a year, and really master it. And so every year since the 90s, I'll travel around and carry around with me a weapon. Especially before the 9/11 incident, I was always carrying around weapons all over all over my body and strapped on, and swords, straight sword on my back, and double swords on my hips, and throwing knives in my. I had all kinds of neat. Anyway, I'm not going to get into that now. I don't want to inspire you guys to carry weapons around and get in trouble. But I would go into a bank, and they'd say, hey, can you put your weapons down? And I'd lay out about half a dozen weapons on the counter, and they go, whoa. But, I wasn't trying to fool anybody, so I'd pull out all my knives and everything, and whip chain and meteor hammer, and lay them all on the counter and do my bank thing and then go out. So I didn't like going into a bank. I like going to drive-thrus and stuff like that, so I didn't have to take off all my weapons. So, but anyway, they're just fun. They're toys, and I haven't cut people up or sliced people's arms off with my swords, but I really enjoyed playing with them since the early 80s. So 35 years or more, I've been enjoying playing with all my weapons. And I've got these great dances. I mean, it's one thing to swing them around, but that's not nearly as challenging as remembering these dances, which have all these different moves and slices and a kick and a punch and an over, and then and all these different ways to use them, and blocks, and they're just art. They're dances with weapons, but every single move has purpose to it, and so I just love it. And I got my cat on my lap here. Sorry if I'm a little distracted. Say hi, Bear. Hi. Anyway, let's just read the book. And that's what I'm going to do with these Shaolin Chi Mantis podcasts for a while. I'm just going to read this book and kind of introduce you to the concepts of Chinese, Shaolin, Zen, Buddhism, and Kung Fu. And remember, the same guy who created Zen Buddhism created Kung Fu. So to me, people who do Kung Fu and don't have the Zen Buddhism, most of them are just thugs, and they're, well, sorry, that's harsh, but unfortunately, it's kind of true. They really don't have any kind of spirituality to them at all. They're not interesting to talk to. Yeah, you got to have the spirituality to go with it, and then you're a more interesting person, and life is more interesting, and other people are more interesting to you. When you have a spiritual outlook on life, everyone becomes more interesting to you, because, you start seeing people in more levels, not just whether you can beat them up or not. That's a pretty shallow level. Okay, here we go. Let's get going here. So, Shaolin Chi Mantis. I'm looking at the book here. Big yellow cover. Not very pretty. I actually made it that way because when I was back in the 70s and 80s, most of the Buddhist books, when I would go to the temples and everything, they were always in yellow and gold printed. So I thought, oh, well, this is supposed to be a Buddhist temple book. So I just put a blank yellow cover on it in black writing. That's what probably not anymore, but back in those days, that's all they did. Yellow kind of meant gold or spiritual. So, but yeah, all the Buddhist literature, a lot of the stuff I would get back then in the 70s, always had yellow covers. So yeah, this particular book, the Shaolin Kung Fu Initiate, and there's another one called the Shaolin Kung Fu Beginner. I think this one has everything that's in the Shaolin Kung Fu Beginner, but a little bit more, which is why I'm going to read this one. Okay, here we go. Shaolin Chi Mantis, and then there's our logo with the praying mantis in the yin yang logo. This is the praying mantis thing. This is, well, I'll get into that more later. Okay, and Shaolin Kung Fu Initiate, or Buddhist Kung Fu Candidate. Now, when I wrote this book in the 90s, I was learning Mandarin Chinese. So I kind of wrote the book in Mandarin, and since then I've come back to California, and everybody's Cantonese and nobody's Mandarin, so it's like confusing to me, and so I'm mixing them all up even more than ever. By Richard Del Conner, Buddha Zhen Shen-Lang, and that translates to Spirit Wolf of Truth. And I explained the whole story about how I got named by the Chen family back in the early 90s in another podcast. Not in this. Which series was that? I got a whole list of podcasts I'm doing over here. Anyway, continue on the cover page. Shaolin Chi Mantis, Traditional Buddhist Kung Fu and Tai Chi Chuan. Really Taoist Tai Chi Chuan, because after I wrote this, I actually got a Taoist mentor, master, and added a lot of Taoism to our curriculum. And then it wasn't until another decade later I put a lot of Confucianism in them. So my school is always kind of growing in information. But, okay, founder, I'm reading the book cover again. Founder, Richard Del Conner, Buddha Zhen. Northern Shaolin Kung Fu of Songshan Temple. Yang-style Tai Chi Chuan and Northern Praying Mantis, Tai Chi Tonglong and Shi Ji Tonglong. Tai Chi Tonglong means Tai Chi, but not Tai Chi as in Tai Chi Chuan. Totally different. This means Tai Chi as in the yin yang symbol. So it's not connected to Tai Chi Chuan or whatsoever, or Taoists at all. It's because there was a praying mantis that had like a Tai Chi symbol on it, a yin yang, and so that's why that disciple of one of the original disciples, hundreds of years ago, decided to call his system Tai Chi praying mantis. His brother found a praying mantis in the forest that had 7 stars on it, and that's why it's called 7-star praying mantis. So when their father taught these kids, he was the first non-monk to learn it. He learned it from a monk, a Shaolin monk, and then he learned the praying mantis. And so when he taught his kids, he sent them off into the forest on a pilgrimage and said, "Don't come back till you find a praying mantis, and then we'll decide what your future is going to be." He had 3 sons. One came back with a blank mantis. It didn't have any writing. He says, "Well, my style's blank mantis." And the father goes, "Okay." His style's kind of disappeared, unfortunately. And then the other style was 7-star, and that style is continued. And the other one was Tai Chi Tonglong. And so each of these kids then went off on their own and taught their kids and maybe taught other people. And after a few generations, they kind of like, if you looked at the exact same dance, they were a little different in one style than the other, even though they were the exact same dances. So they kind of developed a little bit of within the exact same movements in the style. As it was passed on from master to disciple to master to disciple, it actually evolved into something different. So the 7-star praying mantis nowadays and the Tai Chi praying mantis nowadays look a little different, even if they have the exact same forms. And I've learned both. Some of my forms are just from and each one kind of added more forms to it, because there were originally only 3 Shaolin praying mantis forms, but we'll get the history more. Let me see. I was trying to turn the page here. I'm on my computer. So let's see. First time I've ever done this. But then the next page says just Shaolin Chi Mantis, Kung Fu Initiate, or Shaolin Kung Fu Initiate, Buddhist Kung Fu Candidate. So remember, you're just a candidate. And this is before I became a Freemason, which is what they call when you're introduced to a Freemasonry, you're a Freemason candidate, before you actually get your first ranking, your first level as a Freemason. And then you get the second level, your second degree, and then you get your third degree. And that's why they say, hey, don't give me the third degree. The third degree is very tough. It's like a 40-minute memorization. You have to memorize a 40-minute script and to be able to pass that third degree test. It's a very difficult test. And, my cat's calling me. I'll be there in a minute, little buddy. So anyway, the reading along, well, yeah. Seriously, my cat's calling me. But let me just read another page or so. We'll leave this. It's already 19 minutes. I can't believe it. Okay, so we'll just read a little bit more. Let's see. This one page is kind of like the cover, and then the next page is a picture of my son, about I don't know, how old would he have been? About 5 years old, with one of my swords, and he's chopping up a box from China, because I used to import all my clothing and stuff from China. And he's chopping it up, and I wrote a little funny thing under it. Says, "I'm ready for my next box. I mean lesson." And Zhen Song-Dao is his Chinese name. And that was in Tahunga, California. He looks quite excited. He's got this look on his face, and that box really I chopped up. It's like pretty destroyed. He's been having fun with it, obviously. But yeah, you can see some of my weapons hanging on the wall around there: tiger hook swords and a guandao and a spear. But anyway, yeah, that was my house there in Tahunga. So then there's all other books written by me, and then there's a page about me, Richard Del Conner, Shaolin Kung Fu Initiate book. Richard Del Conner is the author of Buddha Kung Fu Student Manual, used to launch his Buddha Kung Fu schools in 2008. So this book was republished. I'd written it back in '96, and then I made an ebook out of it when I created my Buddha Kung Fu School. And I created a whole Buddha Kung Fu School manual, which is the prettiest book I've ever made, all kinds of color pages all through it and stuff. It's a really nice book. I did it in Quark Express. But anyway, this book, Shaolin Kung Fu Initiate, was first published in 1995, preceding the launch of Tai Chi Youth Nonprofit Education Organization. Richard founded in 1996 in Salt Lake City, Utah. With Tai Chi Youth being available to all ages and abilities, Shaolin Chi Mantis, founded by Master Zhen Shen-Lang, Richard's Chinese name, could now be more selective as to who it would accept. It was like my only school up till then. Then I created the nonprofit. This invitation-only concept would also prevent people from joining Shaolin Chi Mantis and becoming discouraged by its traditional demands and concepts of Buddha Kung Fu from the original Shaolin Temple on Mount Songshan in northern China. And I was teaching in Utah, so a lot of the Mormons were really just nervous about learning any other religion. They were scared of learning any other religion. And then a lot of them were called disenfranchised Mormons, and they were kicked out of the religion, and they really just loved it all. So I actually had a Sangha on Sunday. A Sangha is a Buddhist meeting, just where you discuss Buddhism. Kind of like Jesus just talking to people. That's what this was about. Or Buddha just talking to people. A Sangha is just a group of people talking about Buddhism. So I had Sunday things without any Kung Fu, so people could just talk about Buddhism. But anyway, Shaolin Kung Fu Initiate book was written and designed as a means of familiarizing interested students with what they would be required to learn, how they should act towards other people, and the incredible legacy of this heritage they would become a part of by joining Shaolin Chi Mantis, traditional Buddhist Gong Fu, and Tai Chi Chuan. In 2010, Buddha Zhen began production of the 66 videos of ShaolinInteractive.com, where the classes are available for download, streaming, or webinars in group classes or private lessons. Yeah, we started filming them, and then unfortunately, I moved to Utah, and that became a nomadic monk for the next 10 years. So anyway, but yeah, I got my school, and I'm making videos here in my Kwun here in Lancaster now. I got 200 videos done. So the first 2 belt ranks are let's see. Yeah, the first 2 are totally done. There's 50 in the first one, and then I think 80 in the second. And I'm in my 3rd semester now, and I'm not halfway through, I don't think, maybe a third. And then the 4th semester. And in the 4th semester, I've decided at the end where I'm going to teach staff. So you're even going to get some staff training. So you don't even have to become a genuine disciple of Shaolin or be a Buddhist. And you can actually learn the staff training, which I think is just so awesome. It's really good for your body to learn the staff training. So you'll get 1 weapon in my beginner training. So let's see. Continuing on, there's the... I'm on the copyright page. One interesting thing, it might be interesting, let's see what it says. This first edition was first published in 1995 in Salt Lake City after returning from a fly fishing trip with Shifu Rujing Shi. Oh, that was my Taoist mentor. The second edition is published on April 8th, 2013 in several versions, which vary slightly in graphics and typesetting due to the requirements of the different formats. So, yeah, so I tried to make an ebook out of it, just to make it more available to people. Richard Del Conner is a Buddhist scientist. So I don't want to call myself a priest. I don't do ceremonies. I don't do rituals or anything like that. And I was a monk for a while, but I don't want to be a monk. I want a computer. I want stuff. I want money. I want to advertise, promote, sell, teach. So I want to be a businessman. So I call myself a Buddhist scientist. I study the effects of Buddhism on people, and I've got about 40 years of experience, watching how people react and can enhance their lives with Buddhism. Richard Del Conner is a Buddhist scientist and founder of the American sect of Chan Buddhism. Once again, I'm kind of reluctant to actually call it a sect, but it kind of is. Shaolin Zen, and that's what I call it, in 1992. That's when I really started teaching rehabs and prisons. In 1999, Richard, Master Jen, created the Buddhist online church. Don't like calling it that anymore, but anyway, ShaolinZen.org. I call it a cyber temple. And invented the term cyber temple for the website Buddhist Studies. So you can go to ShaolinZen.org, and I've got all kinds of basic Buddhism and traditionally the original Buddhism and stuff to get you kickstarted on what it is. And I wanted to keep growing on that, but I haven't really done anything. I used that to raise my kids, and that was kind of their, instead of making them read the Bible, they read Buddhism, and that's how I raised them. Richard is also a pipe carrier of the Lakota Sioux, who was instructed by God on his vision quest, called the Hamblechia in the Lakota Sioux, in 1994 to go to the roots of the ... And I'm not going to continue on that because that's a whole thing, and I'm going to publish that book someday. But yeah, I was given some really interesting spiritual advice, which totally changed my life. It's always changing and it's always getting better, but I got it was a very mystical spiritual experience. Richard founded Buddha Kung Fu in 2008 and became Buddha Zhen after being a guinea pig test subject of his Buddhist self-development website for actors, actzen.org. I thought my daughter was going to become an actress, and so I created this website so she wouldn't go nutty like a lot of actors and actresses do, unfortunately. And so actzen.org, I created it, and her acting teacher, when she was at Hollywood High, really liked it, she told me. I was kind of hoping to promote it and make it more available to students and young people, because it's about how to it's basically self-diagnosis psychology, and that way you kind of take yourself apart, put yourself back together, and then when you get an acting role, now you can take that acting role and kind of implement that and become that other person. But instead of getting trapped in those roles, which causes a lot of people to go insane and even commit suicide, you can then just pop out of that and go back to creating your original role because you've already done that. So that's what actzen.org is. It's a way to make yourself a certain type of character and individual, because we're all training. When you become a parent, you're different than a teenager. When you're a teenager, you're different than a little kid. So you're always trying to program yourself anyway. So that's what actzen is. .org is. It helps you to kind of take yourself apart and realize where you've been forced into certain things, which maybe you weren't realizing. So you can do everything, willfully. You can decide who you are and how you're going to think and how you're going to be and how you're going to act. And then you can then create a character and now become that really more easily and become a method actor, which I'm big into. I'm a real Stanislavski disciple. And then you can dump all that, go back and put yourself back together the way you were before. So that's what actzen.org is. As founder of the nonprofit organization Tai Chi Youth, and that's a 501c3 charity, Richard has launched an online school for teaching all ages and youth at risk on the internet with videos. And like I said, I'm actually now, I've stabbed at them over the years and tried to get some of my students to help me, but I didn't have the equipment or the money or the finances to be able to actually do the productions and finish any of that. So I never completed any of the programs that I started, unfortunately, since 1992 when I began making videos and trying to create online programs. So, okay, let's continue on real fast. Anything else I want to say here? Dedicated to the best possibilities. That's my dedication page. Richard Del Conner, Buddha Zhen, and it's advertising BuddhaZ.com here. And BuddhaZ.com is now me as kind of a less, I'm Buddha Zhen, is the way I look at myself. When I say Buddha Zhen, I'm the Shaolin Kung Fu teacher. When I say Buddha Z, I'm kind of the Kung Fu master, but who does heavy metal rap. Buddhist rap, I call it. So I can be more of an artist, and I don't have to worry about my, I'm not having to worry about my reputation as being the parent, the shifu. I'm just a kung fu master who does Buddhist heavy metal rap music. And I can, be a little bit more, maybe even sarcastic. But yeah, I like to be very respectful as a teacher and be a good role model as Buddha Zhen Shen-Lang. Okay, so about the author, let's see. I guess since we're talking about me, let's get this over with. I started with Kung Fu San Soo, which was military Chinese police, which is kind of just a martial art like Bruce Lee would have really liked that. All it is just techniques. It's not really a tradition, with a master. You're just learning all kinds of techniques. How to pull people's hair better, how to control them by pulling their hair. That was one of the lessons that always stood out in my mind. God, I get my hair pulled. I was bald for years. It's like, hey, can't use that on me now. But anyway, and I studied with Sifu Douglas Wong, his Solam White Lotus. That was in 80 and 81. And I put down here, I joined the Thai Mantis Federation in 1982. It was, I think, probably late 81. But I was there 82 and 83 and 84. And I kind of graduated in 84 and maybe 85. By 85, my Kung Fu masters at Thai Mantis said that they taught me everything they knew. I knew all the, I knew 13 of the 15 praying mantis forms. I knew 8 of the 10 Shaolin forms. I knew all the weapons except for the Guan Dao, I think, and so I graduated, and then I just taught as a hobby. Never thought I was going to be a teacher until 1992, when I was doing it as a hobby. Even I had interns studying it in my place, in the late 80s, and I was teaching just kung fu classes, so I'd have somebody to do it with. And some of the people from Thai Mantis would come visit me and join my classes and do classes with me because I was a good class leader. I looked at myself as leading classes, not teaching classes. So anyway, in 1992, that's when I created Shaolin Chi Mantis, and I made a business, and I created a curriculum, and I said, okay, I'm going to teach all these things in this order. And I wrote all the manuals, the Shaolin Kung Fu Beginner Manual, the Intermediate, the Advanced, and the Tai Chi Intermediate, Beginner and Advanced books to teach. So I got it all formalized in the curriculums, made out a week-by-week curriculum for 7 years, a whole 7-year curriculum, every single week with every single lesson that you're going to learn for 7 years. And then, let's see, I founded the nonprofit in 96, and which is only the beginner program. This whole beginner program I'm doing right now is, I'm doing the videos for, is the entire Tai Chi Youth program. I just stretched it from like 1 year to 3 years and made it slower, but it's more fun and easier to do. A lot less pressure. And then in 2008, I made the Buddha Kung Fu School because a lot of people were, kind of graduating my Tai Chi Youth School, but I didn't want to bring them into the Shaolin Chi Mantis because I didn't think they were really going to become the Buddhist. I really wanted to put the Buddhism in there, And so I thought, well, I'll create an intermediate school called Buddha Kung Fu. You don't have to shave your head. There's no initiation ceremony. You don't have to actually become a Buddhist, but you can go the whole way in 10 degrees. You get a white sash, and then you put 10 blue stripes on it. And that's more a kung fu master than, well, I've never even, in 35 years, I've never met anybody who could make it that far yet. So, yeah. So Buddha Kung Fu is good enough. But I really hope that I can find some people, well, gosh, I'm actually 67 years old. And if it takes 10 years to get through that program, I'm getting too old to teach it, or going to be. So I'm hoping I can do a decent job on the videos because I've lost my flexibility. I can't even do side kicks to my head. I mean, my flexibility is really starting to become minimized with my age and lack of teaching. I'm not teaching as much. So I'm pressed to just be able to get through this beginner program. I'm going to do the whole Tai Chi Youth program, and then I'm hopefully going to do the whole Buddha Kung Fu program. And then maybe, because there isn't any demand, I don't know if anybody's ever going to graduate my Shaolin Chi Mantis, my real traditional, total, everything Kung Fu program of the Shaolin Temple. There's no demand, and it's just more than any humans ever wanted that I've met yet. Nobody's ever wanted that much Kung Fu. So, anyway, don't even be negative, but what does it say? In 2010, I shaved my head for the 3rd time and called myself a hippie Buddha and made a website called hippiebuddha.com. I tore that website down, but I still own the URL, so there's probably something there, but I haven't done anything in like 10 years or so on it. So anyway, and then there's the table of contents for this book, which is basically all the stuff that's in here, what is it? It's got lots of rules because I wanted to make sure you got all the rules. So this book has all the rules in it. So, I'm trying to scare you away. It's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, I don't know, about 8 pages. And then the Shaolin Code, it goes another step beyond just my Shaolin Kung Fu beginner book. It's actually got everything you need to do the initiation ceremony and really be a hardcore Buddhist Kung Fu master, carry on the Shaolin Temple, which they're not doing. The people of the Shaolin Temple now aren't teaching Shaolin Kung Fu because one of these forms you can't learn in less than 6 months. And when you go there, you learn form, they teach you stuff you can learn in 2-3 days. That's it. And same with their weapons. They'll just show you some stuff that you can learn in a few days, a week, maybe 2 weeks. But it takes 6 months to learn any weapon. I can't. I've never met anyone who could learn one of these traditional weapon forms in less than 6 months. So, yeah, and I've met a lot of the monks from over there. None of them are teaching, and that's the irony. None of them are teaching Zen Buddhism or even Buddhism. I've never met one single monk that comes from the Shaolin Temple who teaches Buddhism. And I've met a half a dozen of them. Several of them open up big schools, making money, and all got 50 students or something. But they don't teach Buddhism. So it's not really a Buddhist temple. It's not really the Shaolin Temple. It's just it's run by the Chinese government. I mean, what do they care about any religion, especially even Buddhism? So they have no interest in it whatsoever. So to graduate, they actually just have to memorize some passages from some book they have on Buddhism, and that's it. And I've seen the documentaries and stuff on the monks, and they're graduating, and they hate it. Oh, I don't like this Buddhism stuff. I gotta memorize all this stuff. So they're not really the Buddhism is wonderful, beautiful stuff. You should love to learn it. You should be excited to learn it. But they're just making them, recite some stuff. It's kind of like the Taoist, the Mao. Anyway, I don't want to get into it, but yeah, it's the Shaolin Temple is not the Shaolin Temple anymore. So where were we? Okay, so yeah, a whole bunch of pages on that. Oh, here's the page, the Code of Shaolin Chi Mantis. We'll start with this one next time. Okay, so I'll read you the code, and yeah, this is kind of cool. We'll start with this next time. So see you then. Zhen Shen-Lang, Shaolin Chi Mantis Traditional Buddhist Kung Fu Podcast. And my goal is to kind of give you a better sense of it. It's because you'll see all these monks doing all kinds of fancy kicks and beating stuff and tying stuff to their gonads and dragging them on the ground and breaking bricks. And anyway, I wouldn't want to get in a fight with them, but, and that's really not what Shaolin Zen Buddhism is about. You're not supposed to just intimidate the world. You're supposed to lead a good life, and you're supposed to help other people lead a good life and inspire them to be healthy and happy and prosperous and successful. And that's what I do. That's why I was so successful in prisons and rehabs. I made people successful. People not go back to prison. People kick drugs. People quit smoking. People quit drinking. People quit all kinds of other disorders. I'm not allowed to say I cured people, but there must be another way to say it, but anyway, I just make people healthier and happier, and that's what I think Shaolin Kung Fu is really all about.